The sun had barely crested the horizon when Marcus Langston pulled into the parking lot of his company's northernmost distribution center. From the driver's seat of his nondescript sedan, he surveyed the sprawling facility, a maze of steel and concrete that hummed with the promise of productivity. Langston Enterprises had grown from a single garage operation into a network of 15 hubs across the state, a testament to Marcus's vision and relentless drive. Yet, the latest reports crossing his desk painted a troubling picture. This location, once a flagship of efficiency, was bleeding workers. Absenteeism was up, morale was down, and whispered complaints hinted at something darker beneath the surface. The numbers didn't lie, but they didn't tell the whole story either. Marcus needed to see it for himself. He adjusted the worn cap on his head, tugging it low over his brow. His usual tailored suits were replaced with a faded flannel shirt and scuffed work boots, his silver hair dyed a muted brown. To the world, he was no longer Marcus Langston, CEO and founder, he was Matt Grayson, a middle-aged drifter looking for steady work. He'd never visited this site in person, his executives had always handled the day-to-day. That distance, he now realized, might have been a mistake. Slipping on a pair of scratched glasses, he stepped out of the car, his breath fogging in the crisp morning air. The disguise wasn't elaborate, but it didn't need to be. No one here would recognize the man behind the company logo. The hiring process was a blur, a clipped interview with a bored clerk who barely glanced at his falsified resume. By 8 a.m., Marcus was clocked in, a temporary ID badge clipped to his shirt, and thrust into the chaos of the warehouse floor. The space was cavernous, filled with the rhythmic clatter of machinery and the sharp beep of forklifts weaving through aisles. Workers moved with a mechanical precision, their faces etched with a quiet intensity that bordered on strain. Marcus was assigned to the packing line, a relentless conveyor belt spitting out boxes faster than he could process. His hands fumbled with the tape gun, earning him a few sidelong glances from his new co-workers, but no one spoke. The silence was heavy, punctuated only by the occasional shout from a supervisor perched on a raised platform. Her name was Carla Vance, the site manager, and her presence loomed over the floor like a storm cloud. Marcus had read her file, 10 years with the company, a reputation for meeting quotas, and a string of glowing reviews from the regional director. But as he watched her stride across the platform, clipboard in hand, her voice cutting through the din with barked commands, he felt a prickle of unease. "Grayson. Pick up the pace or clock out early, I don't care which," she snapped, her eyes narrowing at him from above. Marcus nodded mutely, suppressing the urge to retort. He wasn't here to challenge her, not yet. He was here to understand. The first few hours were grueling. His back ached from bending over the line, and his fingers cramped from wrestling with the tape. But it wasn't the physical toll that struck him, it was the atmosphere. There was no camaraderie, no flicker of connection among the workers. They moved like shadows, eyes down, shoulders hunched, as if braced for the next blow. During a brief water break, Marcus lingered near a cluster of employees huddled by the vending machines. Their voices were low, guarded, but he caught snippets. "She docked my pay last week for calling in sick, no point asking for a weekend off, she'll just pile on overtime instead, I'm too tired to fight it anymore." The words settled in his chest like stones. This wasn't the culture he'd envisioned when he'd started Langston Enterprises. He'd prided himself on fair pay, reasonable hours, and a workplace where people felt valued, not just cogs in a machine. Something had gone wrong here, and Carla Vance was at the center of it. He needed more than rumors, though. He needed proof. Late in the afternoon, as the shift neared its end, Marcus volunteered to restock a supply closet at the back of the warehouse. The task gave him a chance to move freely, to observe without the conveyor belt chaining him to one spot. He was hauling a box of packing tape when he heard it, a soft, stifled sound drifting from behind a row of shelving. He paused, ears straining. It came again, a hiccuping sob, barely audible over the hum of the facility. Setting the box down, he edged toward the noise, his boots silent on the concrete floor. Behind the shelves, tucked into a narrow alcove, sat a young man, early 20s, maybe, with dark circles under his eyes and a name tag that read Jasper Reed. His knees were drawn up, his head resting on his arms as he cried quietly, shoulders shaking. Marcus froze, torn between respecting the kid's privacy and the instinct to intervene. In the end, compassion won out. "Hey," he said softly, keeping his distance. "You all right?" Jasper's head jerked up, his tear-streaked face flushing with embarrassment. "I'm fine," he muttered, scrubbing at his eyes with his sleeve. Just taking a minute." His voice cracked, betraying the lie. Marcus crouched down, careful not to crowd him. "Doesn't look like a minute's enough. What's going on?" He kept his tone gentle, the way he used to talk to his daughter when she'd come home upset from school. Jasper hesitated, glancing around as if expecting someone to materialize and reprimand him. Then, in a rush, the words spilled out. "I can't keep up. Carla's got us running double shifts back to back, and if you say no, she cuts your hours, till you're begging to come back. I haven't slept more than 4 hours a night in weeks. My girlfriend's ready to leave me because I'm never home, and he stopped, swallowing hard. "I don't know how much longer I can do this." Marcus's stomach twisted. This wasn't just overwork, it was a deliberate grind, a system designed to break people down. "That's not how it's supposed to be," he said, his voice firm but low. "You shouldn't have to choose between your job and your life." Jasper let out a hollow laugh. "Tell that to Carla. She says we're lucky to have jobs at all. Last guy who complained got fired on the spot, said he was disruptive. Nobody's dared to speak up since." His eyes met Marcus's, raw with desperation. "I was gonna quit today, but I can't afford to. Rent's due, and I've got nothing else lined up." For a long moment, Marcus said nothing, his mind racing. He'd built this company on the belief that hard work should be rewarded, not punished. Yet here was Jasper, a kid who'd given everything, reduced to tears in a corner because he'd been pushed too far. And how many others were suffering in silence? "You're not alone in this," Marcus said finally, standing up. "Things are gonna change around here. I promise you that." Jasper blinked up at him, skepticism etched into his features. "Yeah? How's some new guy gonna change anything? Carla's untouchable." Marcus offered a small, determined smile. "Not as untouchable as she thinks." He didn't elaborate, couldn't, not yet. But as he left Jasper to collect himself, a fire ignited in his chest. He'd seen enough to know this wasn't mismanagement, it was tyranny. Carla Vance had turned his warehouse into her personal fiefdom, and he wasn't going to let it stand. The rest of the shift passed in a blur. Marcus kept his head down, blending in, but his eyes were everywhere. He noted the way workers flinched when Carla's voice echoed over the intercom, the way they rushed to fix minor errors before she could swoop in with a reprimand. He saw the exhaustion in their movements, the defeat in their postures. By the time the clock hit 6 p.m., he was bone-tired, but more than that, he was furious. This wasn't just about one bad manager, it was about a failure of oversight, a betrayal of the values he'd poured into this company. He'd trusted the wrong people to carry out his vision, and his employees had paid the price. As he clocked out and headed to his car, Marcus made a decision. Tomorrow, he'd come back, not as Matt Grayson, but as Marcus Langston. He'd confront Carla, dismantle the culture she'd built, and start repairing the damage. But first, he needed a plan. Pulling out his phone, he dialed his assistant. "Lydia, I need you to pull every file we have on the Northern Warehouse, employee records, shift logs, complaints, everything. And clear my schedule for the next week. I'm handling this personally." Hanging up, he glanced back at the warehouse, its silhouette stark against the darkening sky. Jasper's words echoed in his mind, "I don't know how much longer I can do this." Neither did Marcus, not like this. Tomorrow, everything would shift. He'd make sure of it. The next morning, Marcus Langston arrived at the northern warehouse before the first shift began. The sky was a bruised purple, the air thick with the promise of rain, and the parking lot was still mostly empty save for a few early arrivals. He'd swapped the flannel and cap for a crisp button-down and slacks, his dyed hair washed back to its natural silver. The glasses were gone, replaced by the steely gaze of a man who'd built an empire, and was now prepared to tear down anything that threatened it. In his briefcase, he carried a stack of documents Lydia had overnight, shift logs, payroll records, and a thin file of anonymous complaints that had somehow never reached his desk. The evidence was damning, but he needed more than paper, he needed to see the machine in motion one last time before he dismantled it. He entered through the employee entrance, bypassing the front office where Carla Vance would likely be sipping her coffee and barking orders via email. The warehouse floor was quiet, the machinery still dormant, but a handful of workers were already prepping their stations. Their movements were sluggish, their faces drawn, remnants of the previous day's grind. Marcus spotted Jasper Reed near the packing line, his shoulders slumped as he sorted through a pile of labels. The kid hadn't quit, not yet, but the hollow look in his eyes said he was close. Marcus's resolve hardened. This ended today. He slipped into the break room, blending into the shadows near the vending machines as more workers trickled in. The conversations were hushed, fragmented, but the undercurrent of tension was palpable. "Carla's on a rampage already, someone forgot to log a shipment last night," one woman whispered to her companion. "She'll have us all on overtime to make up for it," the other replied, her voice flat with resignation. Marcus clenched his jaw. Overtime wasn't a reward here, it was a punishment, wielded like a whip. When the shift officially started at 7 a.m., the warehouse roared to life. Marcus positioned himself near the loading dock, clipboard in hand, posing as an auditor from corporate, a role vague enough to keep questions at bay. The workers barely glanced at him, too focused on meeting Carla's relentless pace. She appeared soon after, her heels clicking against the concrete as she stormed onto the platform overlooking the floor. "Let's move, people. We're behind from yesterday, and I'm not explaining another delay to regional." Her voice was a blade, cutting through the clamor. Marcus watched as hands sped up, heads bowed, and lips pressed into thin lines. Fear wasn't just present, it was the fuel keeping this place running. He spent the morning observing, taking mental notes. The conveyor belts groaned under the weight of overstuffed boxes, a maintenance issue no one dared report. A forklift operator hesitated before signaling a near miss with a stack of crates, glancing nervously toward Carla's perch. And then there was the scheduling board, a chaotic mess of overlapping shifts, some workers penciled in for 12-hour stretches with no break. Marcus snapped a photo with his phone, his anger simmering. This wasn't efficiency, it was exploitation dressed up as discipline. Around noon, he caught sight of Jasper again. The young man was struggling with a jammed tape dispenser, his hands trembling as he tried to fix it before Carla noticed. Marcus stepped closer, keeping his voice low. "Need a hand?" Jasper flinched, then relaxed slightly when he recognized the face, though not the man behind it. "Thanks, Matt, right?" he mumbled, fumbling with the machine. Marcus nodded, playing along. "Yeah. Looks like this place runs you ragged." Jasper snorted, a bitter edge to it. "That's putting it lightly. Carla's got us on a leash, step out of line, and you're done. I saw her chew out Maria yesterday for taking a 5-minute break." 5 minutes. He shook his head, eyes darting to the platform. "She's watching us now, probably. Better get back to it." Marcus followed his gaze. Sure enough, Carla's eyes were locked on them, her expression unreadable but unmistakably sharp. Don't worry about her, Marcus said, his tone carrying a weight he couldn't fully mask. She's not as in control as she thinks. Jasper frowned, confused, but Marcus didn't linger to explain. He had what he needed, confirmation that the rot went deeper than one bad day. During the lunch break, Marcus slipped into the supply closet where he'd found Jasper the day before. It was empty now, but the memory of that encounter fueled his next move. He pulled out his phone and called Lydia again. "I want HR on standby," he told her. "And get me the contact for our labor attorney. We're cleaning house today." Lydia's voice crackled with efficiency. "Already done, sir. I've also flagged 3 potential replacements for the manager position, interim options until you decide on a permanent hire." Marcus smiled grimly. "Good. I'll call you when it's over." The afternoon shift brought the breaking point. Marcus was near the shipping bay when he overheard Carla berating a middle-aged woman named Elena, whose name he'd seen on the schedule for 6 consecutive days. "You think you're special, asking for a day off?" Carla snapped, her voice carrying over the hum of the forklift. "We're short-staffed because people like you can't handle the load. You're here tomorrow, or you're out." Elena's face crumpled, her hands twisting together as she nodded silently and turned away. Marcus's fists clenched. He'd seen enough. He strode toward the platform, his steps deliberate, drawing curious glances from the workers. Carla noticed him as he approached, her brow furrowing. "Who the hell are you?" she demanded, stepping down to meet him. "Some pencil pusher from corporate?" Marcus stopped a few feet away, his voice steady and cold. "Marcus Langston. I own this company." The words hung in the air, and Carla's face went slack, her clipboard slipping slightly in her grip. Around them, heads turned, the buzz of the warehouse dimming as workers paused to listen. "I've been here 2 days, Marcus continued, watching how you run this place. And what I've seen is a disgrace." Carla recovered quickly, her chin lifting defiantly. "I don't know what you think you saw, but I keep this warehouse on track. Quotas are met, shipments go out. At what cost?" Marcus cut in, his voice rising just enough to carry. "Overworked employees? Retaliation for speaking up? A culture where people are afraid to breathe? That's not leadership, that's control through intimidation." He took a step closer, his eyes boring into hers. "I built this company on respect, and you've turned it into a prison." Carla's lips pressed into a thin line, but she didn't back down. "You don't get it. These people need a firm hand. Without me pushing them, this place would fall apart." Marcus shook his head, his tone final. "You're done here, Carla. Effective immediately. Security's on their way to escort you out." Her eyes widened, a flicker of panic breaking through her bravado. "You can't just." "I can," he said simply. "And I am." He turned away as 2 uniformed guards appeared at the edge of the floor, summoned by a discreet text to Lydia. Carla's protests faded into a string of muttered curses as she grabbed her bag and stormed off, the guards trailing behind her. The warehouse fell silent, a collective breath held as dozens of eyes fixed on Marcus. He stepped onto the platform, facing the sea of faces, some wary, some relieved, all waiting. "My name's Marcus Langston," he said, his voice clear and firm. "I founded this company because I believed in hard work and fair treatment. What's been happening here doesn't reflect that. I let it go unchecked, and for that, I'm sorry." A murmur rippled through the crowd, surprise mingling with skepticism. "That changes now," he went on. "No more forced overtime. No more punishment for needing a break. We're hiring more staff, and I'll be here personally until we get this right." Jasper stepped forward, his voice tentative but steady. "You mean that? Things are really gonna change?" Marcus met his gaze, nodding. "Yes. And I want to hear from all of you, what's broken, what needs fixing. This isn't just my company, it's yours too. For the first time, the tension in the air shifted, not gone, but lighter. Elena, still red-eyed from her encounter with Carla, raised her hand hesitantly. Can I take tomorrow off? A few nervous laughs broke out, but Marcus smiled. Yes. And anyone else who needs it, put in your request. We'll make it work. As the shift resumed, Marcus stayed on the floor, watching the workers move with a cautious energy. Trust wouldn't come overnight, but this was a start. He glanced at Jasper, who offered a small nod before returning to his station. The fracture was exposed, and now the healing could begin. The warehouse felt different the next morning, though the change was subtle, like the first crack of sunlight after a long night. Marcus Langston arrived early again, this time without pretense. His silver hair gleamed under the fluorescent lights, his presence no longer a secret. Workers glanced at him as they clocked in, their expressions a mix of curiosity and guarded hope. The echoes of Carla Vance's departure still lingered, a seismic shift that had left the floor buzzing with whispers and uncertainty. Marcus knew that removing her was only the first step. Now came the harder part, proving that his promises weren't just words. He started the day by gathering the team before the shift began. The machinery sat idle, the conveyor belt still, as 50-odd workers formed a loose semicircle around the loading dock. Some crossed their arms, others shifted nervously, but all were listening. Marcus stood on a crate, elevating himself just enough to be seen by everyone. Yesterday, I said things would change, he began, his voice steady but warm. I meant it. This warehouse isn't just a building, it's people. You're the ones who keep it running, and I've let you down by not being here sooner. That stops now. He paused, scanning the faces. Jasper stood near the front, his hands shoved in his pockets, while Elena lingered toward the back, her eyes still wary. First thing, Marcus continued, no more mandatory overtime. If you want extra hours, they're yours, paid at time and a half. If you don't, you won't be penalized. We're bringing in 10 new hires by the end of the week to lighten the load. A ripple of surprise moved through the group, a few heads nodding in tentative approval. Second, I'm reviewing wages with HR. If you're not being paid what you deserve, that's getting fixed. And third, I want an open line, anything you're dealing with, any ideas you've got, you tell me. No middleman, no repercussions. The silence that followed was thick, but not oppressive. A man near the middle, broad-shouldered, with a graying beard, spoke up. Name's Tom. Been here 8 years. We've heard stuff like this before from regional suits. How do we know you're not just blowing smoke? His tone wasn't hostile, just tired, the kind of exhaustion that came from too many broken promises. Marcus met his gaze squarely. Fair question, Tom. I'm not asking you to trust me yet, I'm asking you to watch me. Starting today, I'm here on the floor, not in some office. You'll see the hires come in, the schedules shift, the pay stubs change. If I don't deliver, call me out. I'll listen. Tom studied him for a moment, then gave a slow nod, as if filing the promise away for later judgment. The shift kicked off after that, and Marcus didn't retreat to a desk. He rolled up his sleeves and joined the packing line, working alongside Jasper and a woman named Priya, who'd been silent until now. She was quick with her hands, sealing boxes with a precision that spoke of years on the job. You're really sticking around, she asked, not looking up from her work. Most bosses say a lot, then disappear. Marcus taped a box shut, his movements less practiced but determined. I'm not most bosses. This company's mine, every bolt, every paycheck. I let it slip, and I'm fixing it myself. Priya glanced at him then, her dark eyes assessing. We'll see, she said, but there was a flicker of something, maybe not trust, but interest. Over the next few hours, Marcus moved through the warehouse, pitching in where he could. He helped Tom troubleshoot a bulky forklift, listened as Elena described a bottleneck in the shipping bay, and took notes when Priya pointed out a glitch in the inventory software that had been ignored for months. Each interaction was a thread, stitching him into the fabric of the place he'd once only known through spreadsheets. The workers didn't open up all at once. Years of silence couldn't be undone in a day, but the stiffness in their postures began to ease, replaced by a cautious willingness to engage. By midday, the first tangible change arrived. A temp agency van pulled up, disgorging 6 new workers in bright vests. Marcus met them at the dock, briefing them personally while the regulars watched from their stations. "These are your extra hands," he announced to the floor. "More are coming. No one's pulling doubles unless they want to." A few clapped, others exchanged looks, and Jasper cracked a faint smile, the first Marcus had seen from him. Lunch brought another shift. Marcus sat in the break room, not at a corner table but in the thick of it, a sandwich in hand. Workers drifted over, some asking questions, others just listening. Elena sat across from him, her voice low. "I took tomorrow off like you said. First time in months I haven't felt guilty about it." Marcus nodded. "Good. You need it, you take it. That's how it should have always been." Tom joined them, setting down a thermos. "Forklift still acting up. Carla always said it was too expensive to fix." Marcus pulled out his phone, typing a quick note. "I'll have maintenance here tomorrow. No more band-aids, we're doing this right." Tom grunted, a sound that might have been approval. The afternoon tested Marcus's stamina. He wasn't young anymore, and the physical toll of the floor was real. His knees ached, his hands cramped, but he pushed through. When a pallet stack collapsed in the storage bay, he was there with Priya and Jasper, hauling boxes until sweat soaked his shirt. "You don't have to do this," Priya said, wiping her brow. "You're the boss." Marcus straightened, catching his breath. "Exactly why I do. You're not carrying this alone anymore." She didn't reply, but her lips twitched, a hint of a smile. As the shift wound down, Marcus called another impromptu meeting. The workers gathered, less hesitant this time. "Day one's done," he said. "You've seen the start, new hands, no forced hours. Tomorrow, we keep going. I'm here all week, and after that, I'm picking a manager who gets it, someone who'll build, not break. Until then, you've got me." He held up a stack of notepads and pens he'd brought. "Write down what you need, what's wrong, anything. Drop it in my box by the office. No names if you don't want. I'll read every one." Hands reached for the supplies, some eagerly, some slowly. Jasper took a notepad, scribbling something before tearing off the page and handing it to Marcus directly. "Read it now," he said, his voice quiet but firm. Marcus unfolded it, "Fix the brakes. We need more than 5 minutes to breathe." He looked up, nodding. "Done. Starting tomorrow, 15-minute breaks, twice a shift. Anything else?" Jasper hesitated, then added, "A microwave that works. Ours has been busted for months." A few laughs broke out, breaking the tension. Marcus grinned. "I'll have one here by noon." The shift ended with workers filing out, their steps lighter than the day before. Marcus stayed behind, collecting the first handful of notes from the box. Some were practical, better lighting in the back, more gloves, others raw, "I'm scared to ask for help. Don't let it go back to how it was." He read each one, the weight of their trust settling on him. This wasn't just about fixing a warehouse, it was about rebuilding a community he'd let fracture. Outside, the rain had started, a soft patter against the roof. Marcus stood at the dock, watching the last of the crew head to their cars. Jasper lingered, pulling his hood up. "You're really doing this," he said, more statement than question. Marcus nodded. "Yeah. And I'm not stopping till it's right." Jasper gave a small salute, then jogged off into the drizzle. Alone, Marcus pulled out his phone and called Lydia. "Order a new microwave for the break room, top of the line. And get maintenance scheduled for the forklift, ASAP. We've got a foundation to shore up." Hanging up, he looked out at the wet, gleaming lot. The work was just beginning, but for the first time in days, he felt the stirrings of hope, his, and theirs. A week had passed since Marcus Langston uprooted Carla Vance from the northern warehouse, and the transformation was no longer a whisper, it was a tide. The morning sun spilled through the high windows, casting long beams across a floor that buzzed with a new rhythm. The conveyor belt still churned, the forklift still hummed, but the air carried a different weight, less suffocating, more alive. Marcus stood near the shipping bay, his sleeves rolled up, a clipboard in hand as he checked off a delivery of new equipment, steel-toed boots, ergonomic gloves, and a gleaming microwave that now sat proudly in the break room. The workers moved around him, their pace steady but not frantic, their voices occasionally breaking into quiet chatter. It wasn't perfection, not yet, but it was progress. The 10 new hires had arrived as promised, their bright vests dotting the floor like sparks of possibility. They were green, stumbling through tasks with the awkwardness of beginners, but the veterans stepped in, Tom showing a kid how to balance a pallet, Priya explaining the quirks of the inventory scanner. Marcus watched it unfold, a flicker of pride warming his chest. This was what he'd wanted all along, a team, not a hierarchy. He'd spent the week on the floor, sweating alongside them, listening to their stories, and acting on their notes. The break room now had 2 15-minute breaks penciled into the schedule, the lighting in the storage bay glowed brighter, and a maintenance crew had finally tamed the temperamental forklift. Each fix was a brick, rebuilding what had crumbled. Today was different, though. Today, Marcus would name the new manager, a decision he'd wrestled with all week. He'd interviewed 3 candidates Lydia had vetted, but none felt right until he'd looked closer to home. The answer had been there all along, staring him in the face through tired but determined eyes. He glanced at Jasper Reed, who was stacking boxes near the loading dock, his movements smoother now, less strained. The kid had grit, a quiet strength that had survived Carla's reign. Marcus had seen it in the way Jasper spoke up, the way he'd handed over that first note with a mix of defiance and hope. He'd be young for the role, untested, but Marcus trusted his instincts, and Jasper's heart. At noon, Marcus called the team together again, this time in the break room. The space smelled of fresh coffee and warm food from the new microwave, a small luxury that had sparked more smiles than he'd expected. The workers filed in, some clutching mugs, others wiping sweat from their brows. Elena sat near the front, her face softer than it had been days ago, while Tom leaned against the wall, arms crossed but attentive. Priya stood beside Jasper, her sharp gaze tracking Marcus as he stepped forward. "I've been here a week," Marcus began, his voice carrying over the rustle of the group. "I've seen what you're capable of when you're not crushed under someone else's boot. You're the backbone of this company, and I'm damn proud of what you've held together." He paused, letting the words settle. "But I can't stay forever. You need a leader here, someone who knows this place, who's lived it, who won't let it slide back into the dark." The room stilled, anticipation threading through the air. Marcus turned to Jasper, who blinked, caught off guard. "Jasper Reed," he said, "you've been here through the worst of it. You didn't break, and you didn't run. You spoke up when it mattered. I'm offering you the manager's job, not because it's easy, but because I think you'll fight for these people the way they deserve." Jasper's mouth parted, shock etching his features. A murmur swept through the crowd, surprise, then a swell of approval. Priya nudged him, a grin breaking through her usual reserve. "Say something, dummy," she muttered. Jasper swallowed, stepping forward. I don't know what to say. I'm not some big shot. He stopped, then straightened. "If you're serious, I'll do it. I'll do it right. No one's getting treated like we were. Not on my watch. Marcus clapped him on the shoulder, a firm grip. That's exactly why it's you. You start tomorrow, training with me for a week, then it's yours. He turned back to the group. Anyone got a problem with that? Silence, then Tom raised his thermos. Kids got guts. I'll drink to that. Laughter rippled out, and Jasper ducked his head, a flush creeping up his neck. The shift resumed with a new energy. Marcus stayed close to Jasper, walking him through the basics, scheduling, inventory reports, how to balance quotas with humanity. It's not about barking orders, Marcus told him as they reviewed the day's shipment logs. It's about knowing who's carrying what load and making sure they can handle it. Jasper nodded, scribbling notes, his brow furrowed in concentration. I want them to trust me, he said quietly. Like they're starting to trust you. They will, Marcus replied. Give them time and keep your word. That's all it takes. By late afternoon, the warehouse hit a milestone, the first on-time shipment in months without a single extra shift forced on anyone. The crew gathered at the dock as the truck pulled away, a spontaneous cheer breaking out. Elena clapped, her smile wide, while Priya gave Jasper a playful shove. Not bad for a rookie, she teased. Marcus watched from the sidelines, his chest tight with something he hadn't felt in years, unadulterated pride. As the week wound down, Marcus called one last meeting. The workers assembled, their faces brighter, their shoulders squared. I'm heading back to headquarters tomorrow, he said. Jasper's taking the reins, and I'm leaving this place in hands I trust, his and yours. But I'm not disappearing. I'll be back monthly, and my line's always open. This isn't a goodbye, it's a promise. Elena spoke up, her voice steady. You kept your word this week. That's more than we've had in a long time. Tom nodded. Forklifts purring like a kitten now. Can't complain. Priya crossed her arms, smirking. Microwave's a game changer. You're all right, boss. Marcus chuckled, then grew serious. You're the ones who made this work. I just cleared the way. Keep pushing, keep talking, I'll be listening. He handed Jasper a set of keys to the manager's office. Your turn, kid. Don't let me down. Jasper took them, his grip firm. I won't. We won't. The shift ended, and Marcus lingered as the crew dispersed. He walked the floor one last time, running his hand along the edge of a conveyor belt. The warehouse wasn't just steel and concrete anymore, it was alive with voices, with purpose. He'd come here to fix a problem, but he'd found something more, a reminder of why he'd started this company in the first place. It wasn't about profit or power, it was about people, their resilience, their potential. Outside, the sun was dipping low, painting the lot in gold. Jasper caught up to him at the door, a notepad in hand. One last thing, he said, handing over a page. Marcus read it, thanks for seeing us. Keep coming back. He looked up, meeting Jasper's steady gaze. Always will, he said, folding the note into his pocket. Driving away, Marcus glanced in the rearview mirror at the warehouse shrinking into the distance. The road ahead was long, and there were other sights to check, other cracks to mend. But here, at least, the foundation was solid again, built not just by him, but by all of them, rising together. He turned up the radio, a quiet hum filling the car, and headed home with a sense of peace he hadn't known he'd lost.